A concentration camp prisoner in 1943 handed his SS guard a forged British banknote. The guard examined it. He could not tell it was fake. Neither could the Bank of England. 134 million of those notes would eventually circulate through neutral countries, and the man who commanded the operation that made them would die peacefully in West Germany in 1989, never charged with a single crime. This is how he built the thing that fooled an entire banking system, and why no one was ever held responsible for any of it. By the war's final year, the Bank of England's authentication process, the same process used to detect counterfeits, was returning uncertain results on certain specimens, not detected as genuine, not confirmed as fake.uncertain. For a system built on binary certainty, this was a category of failure it had no procedure for. What the bank was encountering was the output of an operation that had been running inside Nazi Germany since 1942, an operation that had solved, one by one, every technical problem that separates a convincing forgery from a detected one. The Bank of England would not issue a formal account of Operation Bernhard's scope until after the war ended, and by then, some of those notes had already passed through banking systems that accepted them as genuine. The bank never recovered all of them. Some are still in circulation. The SS didn't arrive at Operation Bernhard fully formed. What came first was Operation Andreas, a 1939 attempt to solve the counterfeiting problem with German professional printers, and the assumption that the right equipment would be enough. It was wrong. First failure, the paper. British pound notes used a linen-cotton fibre blend sourced from specific mills. German commercial paper couldn't replicate it. The texture was wrong under examination. Second failure, the plates. The intaglio engraving process, which creates the raised ink texture you can feel on a genuine banknote, required precision beyond what the SS's assembled printers could achieve. The results were detectable. Third failure, scale. Even partial successes couldn't be produced at the volume the strategic objective required. By 1942, Operation Andreas had produced nothing deployable. The institutional conclusion the SS drew from this failure was not to abandon the program. It was to find people who already possessed the skills that professional German printers lack, and to place them inside a facility from which they could not leave. Sachsenhausen concentration camp, approximately 35 kilometers north of Berlin. Block 19 was physically separated from the general prisoner population on a compartmentalist unit placed under the command of SS Sturmbannführer Bernhard Krüger. Adolf Berger was 25 years old when he arrived at Block 19, a Slovak Jewish printer and engraver. He had been selected because of what his hands could do, and he understood, within days of arrival, the precise nature of the arrangement. His skills were the reason he was still alive. The operation's success was the only thing keeping him that way. When it ended, that reason would end with it. Approximately 140 prisoners were selected from across occupied Europe. The selection criteria were occupational: printers, engravers, bank clerks, graphic artists, paper specialists, and individuals with documented forgery experience. The conditions inside Block 19 were materially better than the rest of the camp, with better food, functional sleeping facilities, and a working workshop. This distinction was not humanitarian, it was operational. Skilled workers who were starved couldn't produce work of the required precision. The SS had built a calibrated environment, maximum technical output, minimum living specialists. Every prisoner in Block 19 understood the logic of that calculation, and understood exactly what it meant for them when the work was done. Problem 1. The paper. The fiber blend had to match. The SS procured substitute materials and tested multiple compositions. Prisoners with paper expertise assessed each result against genuine notes. Eventually, one passed. The timeline. Approximately 6 months. Problem 2. The plates. Salomon Smolyanov, a professional forger with documented pre-war experience, was among the prisoners who produced the engraved intaglio plates. He was given genuine notes as reference samples, tools, and time. The quality of the surviving Bernhard notes, assessed by post-war analysts, indicates the plate work reached a high standard. Smolyanov knew what the completed plates would be used for. He made them anyway. He was not given a choice. Problem 3. Serial numbers. Genuine Bank of England notes carried sequential serial numbers within documented ranges. The operation required a tracking system, a bureaucratic forgery problem layered beneath the physical one. Managed with ledger books. Cross-referenced by hand. Problem 4. Aging. New notes look new. Physical processes were developed to simulate handling, rubbing, controlled handling, and environmental exposure. By 1943, notes leaving Block 19 looked like currency that had been in circulation for years. Whether Berger and the other prisoners introduced deliberate errors during any of these stages, slowing timelines, or introducing subtle plate defects, is documented in his testimony. The physical record doesn't confirm it uniformly. That question is addressed separately, because it changes what this story means. Adolf Berger published his account in The Devil's Workshop in 1983. He stated that prisoners engaged in deliberate sabotage, slowing timelines, introducing minor errors into plates, and finding procedural ways to reduce output without triggering SS detection. His testimony is specific and consistent across multiple accounts given between 1983 and the mid-2000s. He is what makes this complicated. It cannot be verified in the physical record. Analysis of surviving Bernhard notes has not identified systematic intentional degradation. The notes that passed through neutral country banking channels were, by documented assessment, of sufficient quality to circulate. Two possibilities exist. Either the sabotage occurred at a level too small to register in the output, or Berger's testimony reflects something real that left no physical trace. Acts of psychological resistance that felt enormous from the inside and were invisible from the outside. He maintained consistent detail through each retelling. The historical record holds both positions. It does not resolve the tension between them. And you are now forming an opinion about which one you believe. The notes leaving Block 19 entered a distribution network managed primarily through Friedrich Schwend and his network of agents in neutral countries, Switzerland, Spain, Portugal, and Turkey. Used to purchase goods, settle transactions, and move through banking channels in ways that made origin difficult to trace. The stated objective was economic disruption. Introduce enough forged currency to undermine confidence in British sterling. Trigger inflation. The British economy did not collapse. 134 million in forged notes, distributed through neutral country channels across 3 years. And the macroeconomic effect was not measurable. Here is the structural fact at the center of this story. The SS built the most technically successful counterfeiting operation in modern history, and then discovered that technical success and strategic success are different problems. They could make the notes, they could not inject them at sufficient velocity to move an economy. The gap between production and delivery was the one problem Operation Bernhard never solved. They had built the gun. They had no mechanism to fire it at scale. April 1945. Allied forces are losing on German territory. Inside Block 19, Bernhard Krüger receives his orders: destroy the evidence, the plates, the documents, the remaining forged notes, eliminate the record. Prisoners were transferred from Sachsenhausen. Survivor testimony documents the conditions of that transfer as lethal for some. Crates were transported to the Toplitz, a lake in the Austrian Alps. Submerged. Austrian divers reached the Toplitz Sea in 1959. They recovered substantial volumes of forged notes, equipment, and documents. Confirmation of scale and technical specifics. But not everything. The full contents of the Toplitz Sea have not been retrieved. The lake has not yielded a complete accounting of what was thrown into it in April 1945. The depth continues to limit recovery. The record remains incomplete. Some of what Bernhard Krüger ordered submerged has not yet been found. Bernhard Krüger passed through the denazification process. He was not prosecuted for war crimes, not tried for the coerced labor of 140 Jewish prisoners, not charged in connection with the deaths associated with the operation's final transfer. He resumed civilian life in West Germany. He died in 1989. His name is attached to the operation in the historical record and absent from the judicial record entirely. That absence is not an oversig HT. It is a documented outcome. Krüger was not unusual. He was the pattern. Operation Bernhard demonstrates two things the record supports without inference. First, that industrial-scale economic warfare through currency forgery requires not only technical capability, which the operation achieved, but a delivery mechanism capable of injecting forged currency at a volume and velocity sufficient to move an economy. The SS possessed the first. They could not construct the second. Second, that the post-war accountability mechanism, denazification, Allied tribunals, and West German prosecutions systematically failed to reach SS technical operatives whose crimes were classified, compartmentalist, or judged insufficiently prominent for prosecution. Bernhard Krüger was not an anomaly in this. He was a category. In 1943, a concentration camp prisoner handed an SS guard a forged banknote. The guard could not tell it was fake. Neither could the Bank of England. The prisoner who made it survived the war. The officer who ordered it survived the peace. The forged notes were documented. The accountability for them was not. The Toplitzy still holds some of what was thrown in. And the question of what Berger and the others did quietly, in the precision of their plates, in the timing of their errors, remains exactly as unresolved as it was the day the lake closed over those crates. The forgeries are documented. The accountability is not. That gap has not closed.